South Korea's acting president has declared 7 days of national mourning as details continue to unfold surrounding South Korea's deadliest air accident in decades. Officials have confirmed that a mayday call was made by the pilot of the inbound flight from Bangkok due to a bird strike on the aircraft before attempting an emergency landing. 179 people died in the crash. 2 crew members who were in the tail section of the plane incredibly survived. The NTSB now leading a team of U.S. investigators to assist South Korean authorities. CNN's Mike Valerio is at the crash site in Muan, South Korea, and has this report.
Well, we're getting a better sense of how expansive the debris field is, and right now we're only a couple yards away from the epicenter of the debris field. That is the tail section of the Boeing 737-800, which managed to survive relatively, and I stress relatively, intact, 15 yards high. And this is the section of the plane where the 2 survivors were pulled from, rescued by first responders minutes after this plane was engulfed in flames. So we're going to pan to the left. That's where you can see this massive yellow crane that will be charged with moving pieces of the wreckage. Then we're going to pan down, and you can see parts of the aircraft that were hurled, jettisoned beyond the cinder block perimeter of the airport. And this is what investigators from South Korea, the NTSB from the United States, will be poring over, scouring over as they investigate certainly what went wrong and were there any mechanical issues that contributed to the landing gear not deploying. But, you know, I think we got a better sense during the day as we pan further to my right, just showing you that some of this debris was hurled from the aircraft a distance longer than a football field. Just to give you the sense of the force of this crash, during the daylight hours, we saw tray tables, yellow inflatable vests, seats that were mangled, and members of the military that were combing this area that we're looking at after sunset, looking for potential human remains, looking for passengers' belongings, and cataloging certain elements of the aircraft, certain pieces of the aircraft. We are waiting for the NTSB team to get on the scene to begin their work. That is the next part of this equation when it comes to the investigation, figuring out what went wrong. And we do know that one of the black box components has been damaged, and it's questionable, an open question rather, whether or not it will have to be sent to the United States for examination. Mike Valerio, CNN, Muan, South Korea.
More information this morning is coming to light this morning in the deadly Jeju airline crash that left 179 people dead in South Korea. Officials now say that the pilot made a mayday call reporting a bird strike just before the emergency landing at Muan Airport. South Korea's acting president ordered an emergency safety inspection of the entire country's airline operation system. Let's bring in now aviation attorney Justin Green, who joins me here to discuss. Justin, great to have you in the studio this morning. Good morning.
Thanks for having me.
You have been a part of litigation with crashes in the past like this. I'm curious sort of your first top line reactions when you see that pretty horrific video.
Well, I think the first thing, my heart goes out to the families. 179 families now are suffering and looking for answers, and they're going to find that the answers are relatively slow in coming. The second issue is we kind of know what happened. You know, we have video of what happened. The airplane did a belly up landing. They did it fast. They ran off the runway. They hit a wall. They burst into flames. The big issue is, you know, why it happened. And the investigation is going to look at every single factors. But the key pieces of evidence are going to be the black boxes, the digital flight data recorder, the cockpit voice recorder, and then the actual wreckage. You know, the wreckage, most of it burned up, but the engines are really the key pieces. And the mayday call about a bird strike, they're going to look at both engines and try to determine what caused what looks like a loss of power.
Yeah, and say more about that, because as we hear about possible causes, bird strike, as you just pointed out, we're now hearing that the pilot made that mayday call. Obviously, the landing gear, clearly there was an issue with the landing gear, that malfunctioned, but multiple aviation safety experts that I spoke to yesterday on our air said those are independent issues. One should not impact the other, and I'm just sort of curious if you think that maybe more than one factor was at play here.
Well, in almost every major accident nowadays, there is more than one factor. a single point failure is not supposed to happen. Aviation safety is based on redundancy. So they have 2 engines, they have multiple hydraulic systems, they have backup systems. So in here you have a confluence of factors that most likely caused it, which may include problems. The bird strike seems to be the initiating factor. But what happened to the systems after the bird strike and how the pilots handled it, that's going to be the focus of the investigation. And answers are going to come out relatively soon once the data from the black boxes are downloaded.
Is that the type of information that you would expect to be also released publicly relatively soon? Because I imagine you have 179 people who didn't live. There is a chance that there could be litigation following this.
Yeah, there almost certainly will be litigation. The airline, under the international law, owes a responsibility to the family to compensate them for their losses. But the focus really has to be on aviation safety. And one of the reasons that they want to let out information early on is to let the whole aviation community kind of know what's happening. So if this is a bird strike incident, every other operator, at least probably of any airplane, but certainly of the next gen 737, is going to want to know what the data is. So when the NTSB investigates, and this accident is going to be investigated by the South Koreans, but when the NTSB investigates an accident, they'll release a preliminary report pretty soon after the accident to give the basic facts. And I expect that we will soon learn basic facts about this accident.
How much does it differ in this plane crash compared to some of the others, including some of that you have been associated with? How different is it that we have the black box recorders, that we have 2 survivors, 2 crew members who perhaps have an even more sophisticated understanding of what was happening just before this crash? How rare is that?
It's not rare.
Okay.
Remember Malaysia 370? They lost the airplane, so they never got the black boxes. So we all speculate, and we have pretty informed ideas of what happened there, but we don't know what happened because the black boxes were not available. Almost every accident, even if it crashes into the ocean, they'll eventually find the black boxes, bring them up, and download them. So it's not rare. We have plenty of evidence. We have video evidence. We got air traffic control, communications. We're going to have the black boxes. This is not going to be a mystery for long.
And then just talk to me, having worked with the victims of those who have perished in plane crashes before, what that process is like now for all of those families.
It's really, really horrible. And I've lived with the families through this process. They want their loved ones back with them. Obviously they know they're past. But right now, they're not even getting the remains, and probably a lot of the families are being visited to get DNA swabs from children, to go to actually take brushes and get hair out of the brushes so they can go identify the bodies. I understand that it takes a long time to get reliable information. The worst thing than the delay is giving wrong information, and they want to make sure that the remains are properly identified and returned in a respectful way. They want to make sure the personal effects are properly identified and returned to the right families. And that's going to take time, but it's very frustrating to the families.
Yeah. Justin Green, we appreciate your insights and expertise, and we appreciate you being here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Rahel.